Okay, I'm going to wait to make sure this works, because the last time I did a live stream with Josh Haley, we were talking to ourselves for 46 minutes. All right, type the number 56 in the chat if this actually works. 56 is the magic number.
Are we live?
I wait for my chat to confirm it now.
Is this for the audio?
Oh, this is live.
Oh, wait. Yeah.
Hello, audience. I didn't realize we were live already.
Okay.
Now.
All right, type 56 in the chat if you can see this. Let's see.
White claw chat.
Okay, here we go. All right, I am live with Mr. Eron Wolf. He is the director of FUTO. He gave the largest donation to my Right to Repair nonprofit of any donor, and he has started an organization that's based on tech freedom. Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you.
All right, so just to get into this, can you describe what FUTO is and what it is that you are looking to do?
I mean, FUTO's it's a very big umbrella. It's basically, I spent 18 years in Silicon Valley. I was acqui-hired out of grad school to work at Yahoo, and that kind of got me, it got me to Silicon Valley. I spent 18 years there, kind of just seeing how it evolved from 1997 up to 2015. It's just kind of very being on the inside, seeing how the big tech companies were abusing people. They weren't really writing good software. I'm a software developer. I write code. I dropped out of grad school to write good code for people. And I felt like I know to be true that, the big tech companies are basically only exist to kind of abuse people now with software. And it's really bad. It's because, there's a lot of great people working at these companies who actually kind of are still drinking the Kool-Aid and think that they are building good software for people, but it really is just, as a means to an end for the companies.
So there's a bunch that I'm sure I could get into on specifics, but I'm just curious, when you say that they're abusing people, what are some specifics in terms of what they do?
Well, I think, you've probably heard about most of them. Obviously, a lot of the things that annoyed us in the beginning with tech companies were stupid, seem silly now. You can't refill your ink cartridge on your printer was a big problem 10 years ago.
I remember.
It's a lot worse now. So that was annoying as fuck, right? Curse. Wrong channel. Let's apologize for that. All right. That was annoying. But, more recent, I think, the evolution of the ad networks has just been terrible because in the evolution of machine learning, where basically, machine learning is about, Google or whoever learning, or Facebook, learning how to manipulate our behavior to their advantage. And, we won't necessarily be making the best decisions for ourselves, but we do make better decisions for them by kind of the way they feed us information and the way they get us to do what they want. I mean, that's Google's. I mean, it's very much in the open. They sell the ability to get you to do things to their advertisers.
You said you started your professional career doing this in the 90s. When did this kind of control over every aspect of the user experience creep in? And when did you notice this trend start in Silicon Valley? Was there a year where it's this is obviously moving towards trying to have control over every aspect of the user experience more? Or was it just a slow creep?
I actually do kind of go with Yahoo as the real pioneers of the we'll build software for free for you, right? In exchange for being able to manipulate your behavior. So up until then, it really was, even AOL was, a subscription model where they would, try to provide a service for people and they would make money through the subscriptions to AOL. Yahoo was the first company that kind of started the ad model. So that's that particular aspect of that started with Yahoo, and obviously Google took that to extreme levels. So that's one aspect, the ad network. For me, that wasn't too annoying because I always felt like, well, I'm immune to ads, so I have a superpower. I can just take advantage. I mean, not to be too cynical, but it's that's a way I can get ahead in life is if I'm immune to ads and other people aren't. But at some point it becomes ridiculous that when you see people kind of just being really dumb and trying the thing that really bothered me as a programmer was when Apple started putting this basically started censoring programmers, where Apple basically with the App Store, they started selling iPhones, and then they said, well, you can program for the iPhone, but we're going to like review everything you do, and we're going to have very strict guidelines for what you can do, and we're going to, have you do 4 or 5 cycles of feedback in order to get your app on the App Store if we don't like what you're doing. And I just thought that was completely unacceptable. If you own an Apple device and I write software for an Apple device, Apple has no business getting in between us. So that was 2010 when the App Store started, 2009 when the App Store really started taking off. And just, then another aspect that's become, I would say programmers were starting to lose their freedom with the App Store. And then we saw with the kind of the establishment of social media silos with like YouTube, which we're on now, and Twitter and everything, we started seeing, these social media silos that were advertised as free speech and empowering creators. We saw them start being used again to censor and kind of, honestly, a lot of people view them as propaganda now, as ways to propagandize whatever they want people to believe. So.
The central theme here seems to be control, whether it's what you're talking about with programming of a company trying to keep you from being able to program for their devices, software that's constantly monitoring you in some way, shape, or form and advertise to you, or just people trying to keep you from fixing their own devices. It seems like this primary theme is control, and companies that want to control more of what you do. This morning I went over how BMW has, they're creating $60,000 to $90,000 cars. You buy it with the heated seats and the steering wheel. They have a separate subscription for the heated seats and the heated steering wheel. So you have to pay for it's like, but you already paid for it.
Right.
And it's this constant obsession with it.
That's just kind of their, deceptive marketing, really, where the true cost of owning the car is hidden from you until again, it's like people aren't smart enough to know everything about the cost of owning a BMW. It would take, to be a good consumer to buy a BMW, you would have to, do crazy amount of research. So they just take advantage of that and they do deceptive marketing. And owning a BMW is going to cost you thousands of dollars more than they tell you it will cost you.
So I want to talk a little bit, which segue a little bit more into the grants program and stuff that you're doing here. So on your site, it says all FUTO funded projects are expected to be open source or develop a plan to eventually become so. No effort will ever be taken to hide from the people what their computers are doing, to limit how they use them, or to modify their behavior through software. This is kind of a cool and laudable goal, and a lot of people think it's impossible to create a profitable and self-sustaining alternative while having the source code be open source. So how do you expect to make your money back paying people to write open source code? Because from the outside world view, it doesn't seem like this is a way to multiply and make more and more billions of dollars, but rather to just throw a wrench into everything that's happening right now. So
I mean, it's a combination. Look, I'm not expecting to make money off these things. I may or may not. The desire for open source really comes from me as a a very, very fundamental belief that these computers are so important in our lives now that it's almost should be a fundamental right to know what they're doing. So open source is a way that you can guarantee that to some degree. In terms of how do you make money off an open source, there's been companies who have done this. Okay. I would actually, advocate for kind of, there was a great model that worked really well in the 80s and 90s, what was called shareware. And people would distribute their software for free, but they would say delete it. They would have a little note that say, delete this if you're not going to pay me. And they might not have been open source in those days, but I think that can work. None of the open source projects today have tried that, where it's it's open source available, but you're not allowed to use it for free. You should pay me and you're a freeloader if you don't. I think the patronage model is the way we need to go into the future, because the economies of scale are so crazy now. One programmer, one YouTuber can reach millions of people very easily. They don't need to be have all crazy technology to stop piracy or stop whatever. They just need to ask people to pay them and call people douchebags if they don't pay them.
I feel like this started in 2004 or so when Gmail came out. I remember when Like, no offense to Yahoo, but I remember like when you can barely send a 4 or 6 megabyte attachment. With Gmail, you could send a 20 or 16 megabyte attachment. You got a gigabyte of storage for free. You just had to let a robot read your email and advertise to you. It seemed like that was the start of this deal with the devil.
Right,
Because when that happened, I thought nobody's going to use this service. Who the hell wants Google reading through their emails? And then everybody used it just to get a gig of free storage. It's like a gig of free storage was all you had to give away to get people to forget about their privacy.
in those days though, Google tried. I mean, I first of all, no offense taken. I was happy when Google beat Yahoo in a lot of ways because it was actually the free market working the way it should. We had Google making better software, and they won, and that's the way it should work. But in terms of Gmail, I mean, they kind of promised they wouldn't do evil and stuff like that. And they promised that humans weren't reading your email; it was computers reading your email. But it wasn't as powerful then as it is now, in terms of how they can manipulate your behavior. With the ads on Gmail, they were all kind of, are they even there anymore? Like I don't even know.
I don't pay attention to them. I think my brain has gotten to a point where I don't even know if I'm being advertised to because it just tunes it out.
Right.
Like I automatically don't see the first 3 results on Google. I don't see the middle of a website. Like there's like a blank space in my brain where it's just burned out where the ad is.
Right.
Because I've gotten so good at not paying attention.
Exactly. Like you're a human. You've out deep learned them.
Which is why I'm surprised that they have get the attention they do. Okay, so moving on, you said that Google winning was kind of the free market doing its thing. I want to move on a little bit to the T-shirt because this hints at the fact that you might have some libertarian leanings, and I wanted to ask you about it. So FUTO's site says, neither the free market nor the free and open source software movement have been able to stop these trends, nor even arrest their rapid acceleration. Monopolies and oligopolies naturally form as power consolidates, and the people don't always make the best economic decisions for themselves. Many libertarians I've spoken to don't see monopolies as inherently bad. They become monopolies by serving the needs of their voluntary customers. Where would your worldview diverge from this, if at all? And do you think part of the free market doing its thing is when people hit the jackpot like you and say, okay, I'm going to start giving grants away to your competitors to create something that is better than what you're doing?
Well, I mean, we can talk philosophically about libertarianism and antitrust. I mean, I'm a huge fan of free markets. They work really well, but they don't work when, capital kind of has a gravity in and of itself, and that becomes more and more powerful, and you get consolidation. Economists study this. It's when you have some like De Beers is the kind of the classic example where De Beers controls all the diamond mines, and then if you start a new diamond mine, it very quickly becomes in your best interest to sell it to De Beers. So, the consolidation is just a natural outcome. It's almost a force of nature in a free market. So you certainly need some sort of mechanism to overcome that. Another aspect of the free market that is flawed is people do not make the best decisions for themselves. People are not rational actors. It's very easy to fool them into doing stupid things. It's very easy to trick them into thinking a BMW is cheaper than it really is to own, right?
Yeah.
So, so those are kind of the two areas. And then, both of these problems are exacerbated by technology because, the economies of scale for software are so much better than the economies of scale for diamond mines. Like Google can just write great software and like get it out there and kind of just control things. Microsoft did lots of kind of things to get Windows out there and ensure they had them. Well, they didn't. They kind of failed, but they get their high market share there. So yeah, there's two. I see those as kind of the two flaws of the free market. If we had omniscient, omnipotent regulators who were also benevolent, we would have proper breaking up of monopolies when they occur and things like that. But these are open problems.
Scott Galloway has an entire book talking about this on how Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Facebook, Google will buy up companies or ideas before they even have the chance to become fully fledged. Yeah. So it's gotten to the point where where many startups' goals is not even I want to create a product for the end user and become profitable. It's I want to get noticed by Amazon or Google and get bought out and be done.
Right.
And that all of these, and then sometimes they'll wind up buying these technologies, and similar to Bell Labs, it'll just be locked away for 30 or 40 years until somebody goes.
Yeah, and that just gets all the talent working on the wrong problems. The talent should be working on making great software for people instead of just kind of chasing this weird this weird dragon that Silicon Valley has erected.
So this goes to the three principles that you had for the people that become FUTO fellows, where they can be a part of your grant program. You talked about how they whatever you make available should be open source, or you should have a plan to open source it. And the other was don't be a sellout. Can you describe a little bit more of the three principles that you have, why you have them, and how they work?
Yeah, I mean, well, don't be a sellout is really simple. I mean, you should enjoy competing with people. An entrepreneur should enjoy competing with people. I mean, the best example is honestly WhatsApp, which I was, these guys I knew them very well, and I was involved in the beginning. But, Mark Zuckerberg looked at WhatsApp and he said, well, it's not that much better than Facebook Messenger. It's not that much, like we can actually beat this. So, but he didn't care about competing with WhatsApp. He just cared about neutralizing the threat. So he saw that WhatsApp was, something that could potentially grow into a Facebook killer. And so he neutralized that threat. And, the people, I kind of, when I look at people in Silicon Valley who have succeeded, it is the Mark Zuckerbergs. Again, back to control. You can have a mediocre software person like Mike Zuckerberg become as dominant as he is simply because he has his desire to control people up at 11. Like, he will not be happy unless he's controlling people. Like, that's just his nature. So, instead of what I would like to see is more entrepreneurs, keep going. I mean, yeah, it's if you're a big winner and you have that $1 billion, exit dangled in front of you, it's very easy to just kind of retire and go get your yacht in the Mediterranean or something. But you're only there because you have billions of people who are relying on you to compete against Facebook. And if you really wanted, I guess my advice to any entrepreneurs in that situation would be, there's ways you can have your cake and eat it. You can go ahead and sell a little bit of your company. Like, you can hire somebody to run it, you're still going to, in fact, you'll probably have a better life if you don't sell out. Even if you have that $1 billion dangled in front of you.
This seems contrary to what you read about, because when you read about venture capital and tech in general, it seems to be that the exact goal is, I'm going to invest $2 million into this company. I hope they get bought out by Google for $20 million so that I get my stick. And it seems like you're looking to do the exact opposite.
Right. And the venture capitalists will put a lot of pressure on you to sell out. All your investors will put a lot of pressure on you to sell out.
And you're telling the people that you're giving money to the exact opposite. Yeah. Like, if Google comes here with millions of dollars, don't do it.
Yeah, and you're also in a situation where your employees are giving you a lot of pressure to sell out, because while it's $1 billion for you, it's you might be able to you're gonna have to look at your employees the next day when you say no and tell them, we're still working. We've got a lot more work to do. That $30 million that you thought you were gonna have is no longer there. We have to work harder. And that's just I don't think that should not be a hard conversation to have with your employees.
I got a couple of interesting questions from the audience before I do my own. What do you think of OpenAI as a concept, how it was ran as a nonprofit and then basically corrupted by GPT-3 licensing to big tech?
I wish I knew more about that, the details of that. So I don't know if I can answer that with a great insights. But I do feel all this stuff, we want it to be, especially AI, we want it to be open source.
Okay, this is interesting, and it actually ties into one of the questions I had for you. Do you support zero political bias, censoring, and search? Are you going to work with Larry Sanger's new search to be unbiased?
I mean, we've actually gave a grant to Larry Sanger. In terms of having zero political bias in search, I mean, that comes back to that it kind of I don't think it's easy. It's just, I don't think that's attainable. You're going to have a system that you're going to have to filter. Child pornography is the easiest example. We want, especially in America, we want all of our, child porn to be scrubbed. I think every country wants all their child porn to be scrubbed. Okay, so that's something we can agree on. And then you get into gray area where it's not, some things people think should be scrubbed, other people don't think they should be scrubbed. And that's where politics get involved. So my solution to kind of the censorship problem really is We need more. We need like, I think a good example is Twitter. The database of tweets should just be open, and you should be able to go to any portal you want. This is the way the internet was in the early days. You should be able to go to any portal you want, and you just search, and you set up an account there, and you follow whoever you want, and they give you the tweets, and they recommend tweets for you, and they do the censorship. But there's not one. With Twitter, there's one company that's allowed to censor tweets. It should be completely separated. There should be 4 or 5 companies that are censoring tweets and also doing recommendations. And then that will give you, at that point, you don't have, I don't think we can't avoid having bias in the search results, and we can't avoid having bias in the recommendation algorithm. But what we can have more choices and a less dominant controlling interest doing that.
Let's segue that into when you give these grants, the people that you work with. Silicon Valley is a stereotype for operating as a complete monoculture. You know what most people think, you know what they voted for, and if they're not saying what it is that they think, that's probably because they fit outside of that. So what happens to your employees, grantees, or funded projects when their political views, who they voted for, what medical procedures they choose to take from, differ from yours?
Well, what
are the consequences?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that is very important to me, is to have be tolerant the way, things were supposed to always be, where, you should be tolerant of all the political views. Is what happened in Silicon Valley. That was just terrible. I luckily escaped from, Yahoo in 2004. So I never had to deal with that kind of environment in a big company. But if you're not familiar with the James Damore story, I mean, that was pretty ridiculous that he was actually, he was just kind of he was a little silly, but he was earnestly trying to make the HR people happy. And they got all mad at him for it and fired him. Yeah,
it's like when they had some sort of some sort of meeting or whatever, or SaaS seminar, and I think when they said that we want feedback, I think that he thought that they actually meant that they want feedback.
Yeah,
it's like, no, because he was being an engineer and thinking, okay, I'll provide you my accent.
Yeah, right. And he had some stuff he was referencing that they thought was blasphemous, and the rest is history. And I definitely, with any kind of organization I have, I want it to be very much tolerant of dissenting viewpoints.
Here's another question I think is really good. It's asking what you think of donationware like Audacity and AdBlock.
Is the question, what do you think of donationware like Audacity?
That's how it should be. That's exactly what I was talking about in terms of, ask people to pay you, and you'll get a lot of money that way.
So the one person in chat, so I'm just trying to read it while having the conversation, said that I had mentioned on an old video that doesn't work because every now and then when I was feeling especially generous, I would, after doing a repair, I would say just leave in the tip jar whatever you think is appropriate. And for something that we charge $300 to $900 for, I would get $3 or $4. And there's a surprising number of people that will do that.
Yeah, I mean, look, for some, you're doing repairs where you have real costs. I'm kind of the opinion that a lot of these things, especially, I don't know, software is something where it's not as, I don't know. I mean, we can take it down to microeconomics. I think it's called the incremental cost or whatever, right? So every time you repair a board, it costs you X number of dollars because it takes you this much time and this much in parts, right? When you write software or when you post a video, if it's viewed 1 million times or 1 billion times, it doesn't matter. It's the same cost. So I do feel like that kind of situation where the cost of kind of distributing it another time is zero, I do feel that should be treated separately. Do
you think advertising will last much longer? Ads have gone from unobtrusive side to banner ads to pop-ups to 3-second forced ad samples to full 30-second required ads. People are fed up, me included.
I mean, yeah, they'll probably change. They'll probably have to adapt to people, right? People are getting fed up. We start ignoring them, but I mean, it'll always be there. There'll always be people paying for influence.
Go, guys, go. Thank you, John Manta. Have you thought of having some sort of digital bill of rights?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have thought about that. I even as a experiment, I thought, well, what as a computer scientist, where we always like to start our things at zero, I thought, what would the 0th Amendment to the Constitution be in the Bill of Rights to handle computers? And it's actually really simple. It's I think everyone who has a computer, it's their tool. They should be able to know what it's doing. They should be able to modify its behavior. I think that should be right. And you don't have to make it, it doesn't have to be a Bill of Rights. It's very simple. It's a computer. It's my computer. I can do what I want with it. If somebody else has one, we can talk to each other. We can try to figure out how it works. We can publish how it works. Whoever made the computers, who sold it to us, has no more say after that point.
This is an interesting question, particularly since, correct me if I'm wrong, you've put about $10 million into Minds.com.
Mm-hmm.
How do you balance censorship and free speech?
I think what I just said is I would like to see a more let me say this a different way. So what was the internet like in the late 90s? Everybody would publish. The whole point of the World Wide Web was everybody can publish. Everyone can set up a web server. They can publish. So if you wanted to tweet in 1997, you would set up your own little website and you would just put stuff on it, right? And then you had tons of search engines who all had access to every website, deciding how they would help the search engine users find you. So that's the way you balance this is you don't have all powerful companies who control all the data making these decisions. You go back to that where, in 1997 or 1998, we had Lycos, we had Excite, we had Yahoo, we had Alta Vista. So we had, 4 or 5 search engines that would help you find content on the internet. And they were all competing very, very, rigorously against each other to make their customers happy who wanted to find stuff, right? Now we have one company deciding that with YouTube. We have one company deciding that with Twitter. And we've wound up with activists in charge of making those decisions who are trying to propagandize people.
Here's another good question. And Louis, you can just repeat it. Do you think that coding should be mandatorily taught in schools?
I don't think it should be coding. I think it should be more. You should learn how computers work. You should understand kind of the basics of computers, von Neumann architecture, things like that. Maybe a tiny bit of programming. Programming's not for everyone, and I think kind of my mantra is anyone can code, but definitely not everyone should code.
And then somebody in the chat, a guy named Sherlock Holmes, is talking about FOSS, and he says most FOSS isn't intuitive to the layman. I hope FUTO will ensure that this is a direction that we can correct.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. Most of the open source software is not good, and usability is part of it. It's also just kind of buggy and stuff too. It really annoys me quite a bit how low quality FOSS is, because it should be. If you think about it, there's 1 billion people probably who have a good enough computer they could start programming, and if 10 million of those people are good programmers, we'd have wonderful software, and we don't, and it's buggy and it's not usable. So I think we need there are some great examples out there now of I think Signal is a great example of something that's really a great software that is usable. That's FOSS. As much as I don't like Google as a company. I think there are lots of engineers there who are still really fighting to make sure some of their stuff stays open source. So you have things like they have lots of great projects. The Chromium, which is used for Chrome, is the core of Brave. So that's something where Brave is another great success, where most of the hard work has really been done by Google to kind of make that browser work well. But then Brave comes and has made it, kind of less egregious in terms of privacy problems.
There's an interesting disconnect I've noticed between the employees at Google and a lot of the actions that they take. Like, for instance, 3.5 years ago, they stopped allowing repair shops like mine to advertise in AdWords because they said it's impossible to tell whether or not they're legitimate. Which is kind of really shitting on their own review platform, because that's where, I have over 1,000 5-star reviews. They all fake. But I'll meet people that say, "Oh, I work at Google. I love your stuff and everything you're doing." And I go, "Oh, cool. When can I advertise in AdWords again?" And they'll say, "Oh yeah, that's not my department."
Yeah, and this is part of the problem too. Is these people do need to quit as soon as they can. I would, I was at Yahoo. You really want to drink the Kool-Aid and believe that. So if you're at Google and you think that, I'm going to fight, I'm going to work internally and Google's going to get better. It's not going to get better. The best way to fix these problems is to quit and to fix them outside of Google.
So this is one of the most upvoted ones. It says, "I would like to hear your thoughts on what I call the Plantation business model, where the customer is not seen as a place to make a sale, but as a resource that can be farmed for constant revenue through things like subscriptions and restricted repair. Is there a way to move the industry off this model, or is that trying to put a genie back in the bottle? Is it too late?"
Hopefully not. I think the key is to do whatever you can as a consumer to pick things that don't do that to you and be knowledgeable. At the end of the day, though, one of the problems with the free market is people are not rational agents. So, yeah, the douchebag business models. I think it's a lot. If you want to make billions of dollars, you're gonna have to do it with douchebag business models. I don't think there's a way to have a unicorn company without doing some sort of douchebag business model. But that doesn't mean you can't do some great work and actually have a really great impact on the world by building a product that does not have a douchebag business model.
I'm going to try to save that for the next question, but I want to ask all the good ones first. Outside of financing, what's the biggest downfall or mistake you see new companies and new investments make from grants that you've given? What's the primary thing that ties together the ones that fail?
Well, we're just getting started, so I don't have a lot of experience in this. So I might not be able to answer that for you for a few years. When I think about, it is selling out. If you want, one common theme of the failures to me is selling out. It very rarely does selling out give you a better result. One example maybe I can think of is YouTube probably did better. They sold out in 2004, 2005, and they might have been crushed by the entertainment complex if they hadn't sold out. But most of the time, if you kind of look at this you just kind of follow any of these products, as soon as the product sells out, it gets kind of crappy after a year or two.
What are your thoughts on decentralized technology, and is it possible for a decentralized, transparent product to be profitable?
Yeah, it's possible. It's harder. It's harder to build decentralized products. So it probably makes kind of the engineering work 3 or 4 times more to make it decentralized. And you kind of see that. There's many reasons why these things suck, but I think if you look at decentralized, something like I mentioned, Signal is something that is very good, and it's centralized. And the reason why it's centralized is because it was so much easier for them to implement, the things they wanted to do with a centralized solution. You look at things like Matrix or something that are decentralized, it's a lot harder. They have a lot more work to do, and they definitely have not nailed it. So first you have to make a good product, which is hard, decentralized. And then, okay, it's decentralized now. So that means it's open source, and, how are you going to make a profit now? And so, it's tricky, but I think it's possible. And I would, the way I would approach this is, a lot of people are approaching this with kind of Bitcoin schemes now or cryptocurrency schemes. I don't think that's working so well. But again, the patronage model or, pay what you want or pay what I ask, those could work. You always do have to, there is the danger of, as soon as you make something open, a douchebag can come and kind of take it and run it themselves and do something undercut you. So it's harder. It's a lot harder. But again, I mean, I'm very much an entrepreneur and a capitalist. I believe, the greed motive is important. Making money is important to have good products, but, just build a good product. And I think if you Linus Torvalds is a great example of somebody who who only ever cared about making Linux good. And okay, fine. He's not, he never had a really successful company, but, he's living a good life. He's living a good life. People respect him. He's built, two great things that people use, and are kind of universally loved. So.
What's your opinion on limits to intellectual property, like lifetime or beyond to license, like Disney?
I mean, that's a whole can of worms. Definitely Star Wars should be public domain now because George Lucas is gone. I mean, he's still alive, but he's gone. Lord of the Rings should be public domain now. It's really silly that, Tolkien wanted Lord of the Rings to be a mythology, a kind of like a modern mythology, like, Norse mythology or something that was built on by other people. And now the only people who can make Lord of the Rings are, I don't know how the rights are working, but definitely I can't make Lord of the Rings. So yeah, intellectual property is a big problem. And it's one of the ways that government is you want to go back to libertarian arguments, intellectual property to me is a way that the government exacerbates the monopoly problem because they're basically making it much, much harder to usurp an incumbent.
Do you know anything about the Fediverse, like Mastodon, Post?
A little bit, yeah.
And what do you think of this, like the federated sort of network that's like Twitter?
Yeah, I think Matrix is the one I'm most familiar with. Well, Matrix is for chat rooms. So Mastodon, yeah, these things. I mean, Mastodon, I believe, had some kind of issues where they got like, I think Gab tried to use Mastodon, and then they got mad that Gab was using Mastodon. So the developers went a little crazy there. That's the way it should be. The problem is, so if you're talking about Twitter in specific, again, like our tweets in specific, it doesn't matter if, like, all these networks where, I did the investment in Minds, like we want them to succeed. It's really hard because all the audience is on Twitter, and because the audience is on Twitter, the posters or the influencers are on Twitter, and so you have this vicious cycle that, again, that creates a monopoly. So, if I could wave a magic wand, I would make all the tweets public, because anybody who tweets does want their tweets to be public. So why can't I set up a competitor that indexes tweets the same way? So Mastodon has those sorts of things, in mind, and there's other protocols like Nostr, which I really like, that are doing this. So yeah, there's people working on these things, and Twitter is honestly one of the easiest technical problems. It's not hard to build a Twitter competitor.
It's hard to figure out how to make it profitable, and also how to get people to use it. Twitter hasn't even figured out how to make it profitable. It doesn't even have to be profitable.
Like, to make something good. Yeah, exactly. They haven't made it profitable. It doesn't cost that much money.
And one of the things that Elon pointed out that I found interesting about the entire thing is that even its most followed users are not using it. So like some of the people that have, they just haven't used it. A lot of blog did it like 6 months.
Barack Obama doesn't use it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So before I make this fun by putting the chat window over here so you could pick the stuff to read. Okay. Do you know about the ASOP privacy phone Brax 2 degoogled phone and Rob Braxman's effort to educate on privacy and degoogle phones? Since you've mentioned graphene, lineage, etc.
Yeah. So the Android open source project is another one of those things that Google does that's nice. They open sourced a lot of the core stuff in Android, and you have dozens of projects now. I might not be familiar with this specific one. We want to get more involved in helping those people, make a good product. At the end of the day, I think the one that seems the most advanced to me right now is E/OS. because they're partnered with a phone, Morena phones or something, and they're actually selling the phone. I do think to kind of make this work well for the consumer, you can't just tell them to go buy a phone and hope that the bootloader is unlocked and then like go do some crazy process to get your operating system working on it. But I mean, this is one of those things where everyone can help. Like, stop buying phones that you can't that have a lockdown bootloader.
What's
like,
interesting with
bring it back to Best Buy as soon as you realize that it has a lockdown bootloader.
Well, with certain Samsung phones, if you actually do unlock the bootloader, this little flag trips and they can see that you did it and it voids your warranty. So even if you can do it, this is something where they're going to void your warranty if you
That's
on the
fine.
hardware because of something you did software.
Well,
which I think is bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, it's bullshit, but does your warranty even matter? Do people use their warranties that much? Like, I would just void my warranty.
Me too.
And I would also just I would get my money back by buying a $200 phone instead of a $1,000 phone.
Yeah, Jessa Jones has a shirt. She sells a T-shirt from her store that says "I void warranties," and she gives it to the people that come to her class.
Okay,
it's
cool.
hysterical.
Yeah.
I love the idea behind it.
Yeah.
All right, so before I get to let's read through the chat together to find the good stuff.
Yeah.
This is like the most upvoted and awkward question on my Discord, and I have to. So you said most people don't. You're not going to get to being making billions without a douchebag business model.
Yeah.
Which leads us to our question.
Yes.
Which.
So how did I get enough money to fund
this
these
is not an
things?
iJustine or Marquez
I feel like
interview.
I have finessed the situation in Silicon Valley where I can still live with myself and also have. So I never. My big sellout decision was when I was in grad school. I had a game site where people could just play pool and when I had it, you could play chess and hearts and spades. And I was in grad school, and the internet was just it wasn't a situation where everybody was gaga about the internet yet. So I was like, okay, I can't do this. I don't have enough time to do this. I'll let Yahoo take it over from me. And I'll go back to grad school. And then Yahoo convinced me to drop out of grad school. So I did that, and I was there for 6.5 years. I think, the best thing you can do if you're like in this situation, if you're in the situation I was in, is just dissent as much. Like, I would dissent over what Yahoo was doing. They weren't the ad model wasn't necessarily as scary in those days, but I mean, I remember they were censoring, like we did the Chinese game site, and they told me I needed to add freedom, democracy, and Tiananmen Square to the profanity list. So, I mean, I did that, but I mean,
did you feel like
I
you had to
sent
take a shower afterwards?
Jerry Yang was the co-founder of Yahoo. He was born in Formosa, or whatever you call it, Taiwan, whatever, China, whatever they want to call it. He was born there. I made sure he knew what we were doing, and I was like, okay, it's not my decision. So I guess I'm guilty of tagging along with some of the douchebag decisions. Absolutely, yes. But being kind of a vocal dissenter at the same time, I always would have rather, I would talk to the co-founder of Yahoo, not Jerry, but David Philo, quite a bit. I mean, I would try to convince David to quit Yahoo. Kind of all of my, everything I ever wanted. Anytime I ever talked to anybody in Silicon Valley about kind of a more kind of altruistic approach to things, fell on deaf ears, or they were lying. So they would say they cared about something, but they were just lying to me. I'm probably a bit of a douchebag though too.
Everybody is a little bit. That's one thing I've gone over on this is don't idolize people, because everybody has the potential for a little bit of bad within them. Which then leads us, to the second difficult question. How do people know that they can trust you through this grant program? Because like from what you've shared with me, when I've...
Hey, the stream is frozen.
Piece of shit phone. Let's see. FPS went to 0.
Yeah.
How long ago?
Framework.
Not that long ago.
It doesn't even show that it's uploading. Does it play on your phone?
It's not. It's frozen.
You piece Need a new platform.
2.
How is it? Oh.
How many minutes did we lose? Do you think?
It just happened.
Okay.
Okay. Stop. Oh, I see what it is. This piece of shit. I'll fix it. There we go. Properties. Deactivate. Activate. It's this stupid thing. If it gets static, it does that. Oh, you effing piece of.
So shoot, what was the question you asked
So
right before it got frozen?
We're good.
I was saying, so with
We're talking about being douchebags or something.
yeah,
right?
people have asked me, how do they know that they can trust what you're doing?
Yeah,
so like with some of the people we've reached out
Right.
to, like we reached out to the person who runs Graphene OS, and
Yeah.
your intention is, I want to give you money to keep doing what you're doing and add no strings.
Yeah.
Which sounds really cool. It's just most people, they're just not conditioned to believe that that is a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, and we are.
modern
I mean, sometimes there are strings. Like we do investments with, more traditionally organized companies where we do try to put strings, but they're usually strings in the opposite direction that will, help them, stay more independent. In terms of the grant program, I mean, you're not going to be signing a contract. You're going to get a check. So, in terms of, how do I earn your trust over time? Yeah, I mean, I would love for FUTO to be a very trustworthy organization.
You have not told me once for anything I've been doing over the past 2 years how to do it. I don't like this law in this state. I don't like this approach. You just gave me a check and just you do you.
Yeah, I'm pretty hands-off.
Pretty much don't be a sellout, which is honestly
Yeah.
I mean, I thought in the beginning that this was me getting pranked or getting punked because I'm just thinking, who's going to do this? But, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay.
Oh, here's a good question for you, Eron. How do you reconcile your stance on IP with the legitimate claim that content creators, artists, etc., have to protect themselves from piracy or from larger corporations? I also added.
Yeah, I mean, this might sound brutal, but I mean, I think I like a world with starving artists rather over a world with Disney being cultural imperialists over the whole world. How can we get IP law to help little guys? Yeah, ideally we have IP law that will help little guys and not help companies like Disney. That's the job for IP reform. Until that happens, I'm going to be a staunch advocate of people. I like Matt and Trey Parker. I love Matt and Trey Parker who do South Park. They have publicly stated that they do not care one bit if you pirate their show. They are in it because they love creating South Park, and that's we used to call them. I mean, starving artists used to be a term. I don't know if it still is, but and this is somebody who also, as a programmer, I've made money by selling software, and would I give that money up to have a proper reform of IP law? Yes, I would. I would give that money up if I could actually be the benevolent dictator of intellectual property in the world. Yes, and do it properly.
Yeah, and as Ann Feinstein said in the chat, Disney is the reason we have so many of the current IP laws in the U.S. And I think that a lot of IP laws now actually work against the little guy rather than for him.
Exactly. So, I would love, there's really wonderful Star Wars films being made on YouTube, and Disney makes all the money from them, and it's illegal. Like I think there was a Star Trek. Movie that was going to be super cool. They were doing a crazy budget for a really good Star Trek movie, not the crap that J.J. Abrams is doing. And they just got shut down by Paramount.
Starving. Right? This is a good one. Starving artists make art because they're called to make art. Why would you advocate undermining any structure that might make it possible for them to eat better?
Wait, let me make sure I parse that right.
This one.
Why would you advocate undermining any structure that might make it? Oh yeah. Well, I mean, they're saying that we should keep them starving because we'll get better art if they are starving. That's what I think he's saying.
Oh, I can't. Yeah. Okay, I didn't even get it. Are there any functional IP legal frameworks out there that we can learn from?
I think what we had maybe like 50 years ago before Disney kind of fucked everything up.
Nice Amigas. Do you have any other models?
I have, yes, I got an Amiga 1000 from my grandparents in Christmas of 85. And then I got an Amiga 1200 after my second year in a sophomore in college. And then I also just bought an Amiga 500 for the fun of it later in life. And then I bought an extra Amiga 1000. So yes.
Do you see software vendor locks or subscription models where users never actually own the product as part of right to repair, or is this something else?
That may be a question for you.
Well, I would say, do you see is that something that was part of what you were trying to fight, like the subscription model and software locks?
Yeah, yeah. I think,
would you be cool with your fellows, selling hardware, but you have to subscribe to something to make that hardware work properly?
No. Well, this is what I think. It should be a very loose lock. It should be something where, yeah, sure. If you want to say to somebody, well, I mean, you have to. Devil's in the details, right? If you want to put some minimal amount of effort that has to be put into buying something to unlock it, sure. But don't do but don't do like strict DRM. So if somebody wants to be, it should be easier for the consumer to be a douchebag and freeload. I guess is kind of my thing. So I would, because at the end of the day, we have to be able to control our computers. I mean, we were talking earlier today about the medical device people.
Eyes.
Yeah, where it was those sorts of locks made it impossible for people to do anything once the company went away.
The company went out of business and they had an issue and they couldn't get access to any of the repair tools or documentation. So you had people that were able to see again that were then blind because their bionic eye didn't have a service manual out for it.
So what I would like to see is, again, you saw this with shareware in the 80s and 90s, where you would,
Raspberry.
Have enter the code to unlock this software, but it's all open source, so you could just hack into the software easily yourself if you wanted to be a freeloader and do that. But if you want to if you want to PayPal the person $50 to get the code, that's the way it should be. It should be a very loose thing.
Do you love the Raspberry Pi, and what makes you a fan? If so, why? What makes you a fan?
I actually got into. I have mixed feelings about the Raspberry Pi now. I picked the Raspberry Pi a few years ago because as a programmer, I started my own project where I really wanted to get kind of back to the way computers used to be, to programming the actual computer instead of having millions of lines of code in the operating system between yourself and the computer. So I picked a Raspberry Pi to start doing that. And then unfortunately, Broadcom does not make it easy for you to program the Raspberry Pi. All the Raspberry Pi really lets you do is program anything you can attach to the 40 pins on the top. So we're actually looking at BeagleBoard now as something that could potentially be much better, because BeagleBoard does give you an 8,000-page manual that tells you how the board actually works, and that's what we want. So we would love for Raspberry Pi to start doing that too.
As someone who is forced by our industry to use a large quantity of Microsoft software, and also as a non-programmer, what can she do to support free software?
I think the kind of the things I said earlier, make sure that when you buy a phone, it's unlocked, right? Like you bring it back to Best Buy if it's not, if the bootloader's not unlocked. FUTO is going to be doing kind of more and more. Hopefully, we've done one so far. We want to do some educational videos to help people with this. So, things like ad blockers. We want to help people using ad blockers to get rid of, I don't think you should never feel guilty about blocking an ad. There is just like an insidious, evil technology, ad networks.
Linus is going to be pissed.
Never feel bad. So, there's I hope that FUTO will actually publish a pretty good survey of ad blockers sometime in the near future.
I really want to see projects like Graphene OS and things like that, because when you see the shoestring budget that so many of these people are working on and the amazing stuff they're able to produce, I can't wait to see what they're able to do with actual grants on potentially different devices and everything else. Okay, the most important question ever, tabs or spaces?
So I used to be a tabs person, but I'm actually, so with my own project, which is very much, I've decided that this is a stupid thing to argue about. We should be using, I think they're called structural editors now. So I'm actually working on a editor for programs where you're editing the abstract syntax tree directly. So tabs and spaces is just a preference, or however much you want things indented. As the tool shows you the abstract syntax tree of the program, you decide that, and it's not tabs or spaces, it's how many pixels or whatever.
Serious question, not being sarcastic. Do you oppose software as a service altogether, like Photoshop is a one-time cost up front instead of $10 a month?
Yeah, that's stupid. I mean, it's awful. Yeah, I mean, I would use GIMP if you can. Try to use GIMP.
There's one piece of software that does everything I need called Repair Shopper for my business. We paid $100 a month since 2013.
Yeah.
Because they actually integrate with my phone system and they integrate with QuickBooks in a way that's just beautiful. And nobody else did those two things. And the software got sold to somebody else. God bless Troy. You made amazing software. I get your bag. But now it's been so. If this new company decides to close, I've paid over $7,000 for a piece of software that has all my data in it that I don't even own. And that just feels weird. It's like I've given you $7,000 or $8,000 and if you guys go out of business, I'm done.
Yeah. No, I mean, it sucks. I mean, if there's some software that requires constant updates, it should still keep working if you have an old version of it.
How did you become aware of this channel or me and the Right to Repair movement from Ann?
Probably YouTube did recommend you to me
probably
at one
real
point in
estate
time.
Building. I think I found probably some real estate video or something. Like when you got that building on the same time that I was moving. That would be funny if like a real estate video got this recommended.
No, it was definitely your Right to Repair work. It was definitely Right to Repair. I hate Apple more than you do. So, yeah.
That's saying something. Why do they lock the bootloaders on phones in the U.S., but in Korea you do not get locked bootloaders? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. That's a good question. Maybe maybe that's kind of culture. Maybe the culture is doing that. So maybe somehow in Korea there's a more vibrant culture of people putting their own operating system on their phone.
Rob Braxman, the YouTube guy, has been driving hard for a privacy-oriented phone and doing a good job so far. Some group needs to open source the baseband someday.
Yeah, I mean that's the very frustrating part. And then what I learned with the Raspberry Pi and with the Broadcom is going down into these computers these days. It's very, very complicated. There's all this firmware there that's really hard to get into. Most programmers have no access to it. Yeah,
what's weird is with Fairphone, I believe in what they're doing. I believe in their mission. I believe in their ethics, morals, and everything. They will not make schematics available. And something tells me that that's because like lower down the chain, they're dealing with some manufacturers where they're using their reference design and they're saying, you can't make this available. And like, whether it's Qualcomm or Broadcom or somebody else, there's really no choices there.
I mean, I don't
Qualcomm's patents are like an iron fortress that you're just never going to.
Well, the theory I heard is that a lot of this stuff can't be opened is because it opens them up to lawsuits, because they're actually like a company will sell something to 10 different people and they'll sell the exact same thing to 10 different people.
Yeah, no, I was told the same thing where they said, like, let's say the company that makes it for us, they have two choices. They can either A, make us a completely different design, or B, take what they made for Dell and go Control C, Control V.
And I know for a fact this happens with software. So,
like, why would you go out of your way to engineer a Wi-Fi circuit or a Thunderbolt circuit from scratch when you just did it for this guy? Like, why would you come up with a different way to do the same thing?
Right.
So the idea is that all these companies, if this gets released, would just start suing each other over the designs. The weird thing is, again, if you go to VinaFix, like, people are already pirating these schematics like crazy. And they're already available 6 months to a year after. So if that was an issue, wouldn't they be suing each other nonstop right now? Because you have all that stuff available.
Yeah, I mean, the legal situation is, I mean, there's lawyers all the time telling you what you can and can't do, and most of the time engineers just listen to what the lawyers tell them.
Let's see.
Symboria asks, how do you feel, Aaron, specifically about Apple's consistent right to repair infrastructure? Perhaps you guys haven't addressed it yet during your stream. I don't think you talked specifically about Apple.
I didn't know what they meant about right to repair infrastructure. Does he mean like the infrastructure of lobbyists that constantly make things up?
I think
or
so.
Something else?
I'm guessing the bad thing.
I wouldn't trust anything Apple says. Like, I'm sure they're going to do this. They'd do a PR. They'd say, oh, look, we support right to repair now, and write up all this shit. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't trust a word they say.
Pretty much, yeah. In Washington, they were trying to sneak stuff into the bill. This is very interesting. So for that bill, they actually hired the lobbyists that represent school districts and had them represent tech companies, so that it would seem like it was the school districts that had these opinions, saying you need to insert into this law that this is not going to involve students, or if somebody is a student, this is not going to apply to them because we need to protect their data. And they tried to scare them into this false issue. And the thing, because you figured me out. I don't want to make $200 or $400 soldering a chip on your board. What I really want to do is I want to steal your book report. I want to take your Macbeth stuff and, I don't know, copy and paste it into my own version of SparkNotes. Like, they actually managed to convince people of this.
Yeah.
It's very...
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of honesty out there. It's really sad.
I think the PinePhone Pro is schematics. It's basically a shrunk down Pinebook Pro, which even has a build of materials, not just schematics. So what do you think of the PinePhone?
I mean, I got the PinePhone and the PinePhone Pro. You know, we looked into it. It's it's all winner, I think, is the SoC for it. So I think it's different, because I think it's all winner for the PinePhone and it's Rockchip for the Pinebook Pro. But maybe I'm wrong about that. You know, all these things are a problem in terms of, like, I could never find good docs for any of the stuff in the PinePhone. I mean, the BeagleBone was the first time I saw anything with really good docs, and even then it was, you know, it's tough even with the docs, and they're probably not super accurate, but at least they're trying.
Can you get Lewis to make more schematics or dye shirts? Email steve@rossmangroup.com. He was supposed to do that 6 weeks ago. Everybody spam steve@rossmangroup.com. Don't tell him it came from the stream, though. He'll be pissed off at me. Follow-up question on software as a service. How about things like cable TV subscription? Interesting question.
Super chat about DRM.
I mean, I've been a cord cutter since probably 2001. So I don't cable TV subscription.
The problem with DRM is that legal buyers usually have regular recurring problems. Meanwhile, anybody who's broken DRM usually have zero troubles thereafter. Proves problem due to DRM code. Yeah, every time I've tried to use something that's DRM'd, it's been a royal pain in the ass. Like, even just if I want to buy a show like 24 and on my Android phone using YouTube, and I hit the power button because I don't want it to like automatically go off in my pocket while I'm working out, but I want to listen to something, I can't do that. But if I download a copy of it and I use a video player that allows me to play it with the screen off, then it works. So there's so many ways where when you pay for something, it's more annoying than if you just pirate it.
Yeah, it's
been 20 years of that.
Yeah.
The experience is consistently shittier when you pay for it. Absolutely.
And what you're doing, though, is already technically advanced for like 90% of the public, though. They don't know how to download 24. You know, obviously, you need to make sure you do it legally if you're going to download it.
Well, we just had the game company Ubisoft claim that you can buy their games now, but they will no longer let you play them after September 1st. I don't know if you saw that. You can pull it up, but... This happens in video games quite a lot.
No, it sucks. It sucks. And like, nobody should be breaking the law, but these are fucking awful policies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, are you guys done recording?
Not yet.
No, we're live streaming.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Did you leave something here?
Some people are asking how to get in contact with FUTO.
The links in the video description?
Yeah, go to futo.org.
Links in the video description.
We have a few email addresses for various things to contact us about. So have fun at the website.
Links in the description. So the first test to get a grant is, can you read the video description? That's like the first test. Like with me, the first test to email me is, can you spell my name with 2 N's? If you can, I'll get your email. If you can, I won't. It's like a very low bar. But yeah, all the info is in the video description. So if you're interested in any of this or are working on a very cool project that you think is worthy of a grant, go for it. And again, there have been no strings attached to mine. I've been encouraged to not sell out, so I fully endorse this project. Let's see. What do you think of the FSFE asking that vendors be forced to open source firmware of end-of-life products so they can be maintained and kept safe from security holes?
I don't know the details of that. Those are the sorts of things that I think are good, though. Like, if government's going to get involved, it should be weakening the protections that kind of the powerful companies have. So if you're saying you're forcing somebody to release something, well, all you're really doing is saying they can't sue anybody who publishes it, which is good. I would prefer that, more people be able to publish information about how our computers work and not get sued.
Is it feasible? This is a good one. Is it feasible to have algorithms which are transparent on sites like YouTube instead of this black box nobody properly understands? I was talking to a friend about this who had read this book on AI that was published by some really absolute genius professor from the 80s on it that had worked at Google for a short period. And her theory was that almost nobody at Google besides that one dude even knows how their AI works. And that's like, it's not even like you can ask. It's not like it's a well-kept secret. It's that nobody at Google actually knows how
if you open like 99, I think the entire source code to like Windows NT or something, like Windows was leaked in like 2002 or 3 or something. It didn't matter. Nobody could do anything with it, like besides Microsoft. So if you make the recommendation algorithm open, there's not going to be that many people understand what it's doing. I think the most, again, back to kind of what I was saying earlier, the most important thing to open is the data, the actual data that they have in the YouTube, index of all their videos, right? And let everybody make their own recommendation algorithms. And that's where I see the problem. The problem is not that we don't know what the recommendation algorithm is doing. The problem is that we don't have several competing recommending engines.
You could radically shift people's opinions in society and how people get along just based on the content that you bombard them with.
Right.
Did you ever hear the experiment that Facebook did in 2014 where they recommended different, so that like for certain people they would show the sadder content in their feed,
right,
prioritize instead of organizing it by day, and then they tried to experiment and figure out were those people sadder or madder as a result of getting that in their feed? And the result was yes. The people that had the sadder content in their feed did wind up actually posting sadder stuff, and it did affect their own mood. Mm-hmm. And of course, because Mark Zuckerberg is such a great person, he never told, no, you aren't opting into this. Nobody knew that this experiment was being run on them.
Yep.
Which is kind of fucked up.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
Let's see. More questions or ready to call it a night?
I mean,
let's see.
If people are bored, we can go away.
Can you upvote questions? Impossible. If YouTube's algorithm was well known, everyone would exploit it. I think people do that now, though.
Yeah, and it's not everybody knows how to exploit it. That's kind of the worst. Is you have, really, big marketing companies know how to exploit it, and the everyday person has less knowledge to be able to exploit it.
Franchise fees between cable and government are often illegally misused when they should be for public access programs. Would Eron and Lewis be willing to campaign on this topic? I don't know anything about that.
Another question for Eron.
Come around here so you use the microphone. People are here.
To flux or not to flux?
Shoot, this is a meme. Am I showing my Gen X? When's
the last time you used a soldering iron?
So that's just it. I have always been a software person, so I've never used a soldering iron in my life.
We'll have to change that before I get out of here. Okay. We'll have to have you fixing a motherboard and me trying to code a piece of software.
All right, sounds good.
We'll see which one goes worse. What does FUTO stand for?
It's 4 letters that sound great together.
True. What's a device you'd like to see a company take, like Framework and Fairphone have? Huh? I think I'm reading this backwards.
No, I'm reading it too. What's a device? No.
I think it's like maybe what we would like to see Framework and Fairphone.
Yeah, like this is so. This is the only laptop company that released a motherboard schematic. If you're willing to sign an NDA, which is kind of a but like they'll
look. They're all
Look at how easy
trying
this
to do
is.
the best they can. I mean, their hearts are in the right place.
No glue, no screws. You want to replace something? It literally just
nice.
Like, this is beautiful.
It's great.
It's just.
That's
I hope this
exactly
company
what you
makes
want.
a lot of money, and I hope that this sells well.
Right. In terms of what they do in the future, I mean, just don't sell out. Keep at it. Keep at it. It's going to be a lot of hard work to get this going. I think one of the things we're actually looking at with one of our grants is we're these chips are just way too complicated now. So we do kind of want to see if it's possible to get a simpler design for the boards in these computers, for even the CPU.
Yeah, because I think a lot of these companies wind up using a board that's like a reference design of somebody's or like they'll use an AMD or an Intel reference design because it's just like they're not going to make their own from scratch unless they're Apple
I mean they're using Intel. Everything in this framework laptop is Intel, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So, at the end of the day, they're doing the best they can with what they can control, which is sadly very little of what matters.
It looks like you are more muscular than the average programmer. Do you work out in the gym 4 times? No, I'm fucking. So do you work out in the gym?
Yes, I do lift a little bit. Thank you, Marshall, for helping me not be so out of shape.
Oh, from Paul Daniels. This is the guy that programmed my board view software. Would you consider it a viable compromise if companies released board views or schematics, but you had to use their specific software to access them? So let's say a company releases board views and schematics for their device, but you have to use the company's software to access the schematics to their device.
Why would they want you to force you to use their software? I don't know.
I don't know, because they're Australian. What the hell? What kind of mind do you have, Paul? Let's see. Schematic. What's one of your own free open source projects that you're proud to have contributed code to?
So I have never contributed. I am very much I only work on my own projects. So, and I worked on Yahoo Games, right? And then I kind of did some random projects for friends, and it was never open source. I have never actually done open source code. That said, when I kind of got completely fed up, with the company that I helped start in 2014, and I was working on an Android app for that company. And I wasn't fed up with the company; I was fed up with Android Studio, actually. So I started working on my own programming system, which is still very much a personal project, which will be open source. If it ever is, it will never be. It's entirely it's a programming system designed around making things open source. The same way Gentoo was a Linux distribution designed around making Linux more open, and more programmable. So that's the one thing I've done, and hopefully I'll finish it one of these years, and you guys can use it, and no one will be using it unless they're also getting the source code for it.
Is the grant program open internationally?
Yes.
Yeah, there's one person that you were thinking of funding that's in Canada, and you had no problem with that. FUTO might be misinterpreted as puto, which is a Spanish word which roughly translates to fornication.
Also, futa, that's also good.
I'm sure this was all thought through.
It can be whatever you want it to be. It's 4 letters that sound nice together.
Fornication can sound nice together.
There you go.
Let's see. Would Eron be interested in funding a free open source project aiming to give back control over our most personal devices, smartphones, to us, to the actual users and owners of said devices? If so, check App Manager.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll make a note.
Yeah.
I write that down. You've expressed interest in funding companies making or people that are designing alternative operating systems, and a lot of the Android open source projects. So why'd you have to bring up food? Okay, what type of device would you like to see some company make an open repairable version of that doesn't have one? So for instance, like Framework, they made a laptop where they'll sell you the parts, they'll give you the schematic and everything else. Is there any other industry where like there's a device that you'd like to see somebody make an open repairable version of that doesn't exist?
I kind of consider the repairable aspect your domain.
Medical equipment.
Yeah.
Like I can complain about a $600 smartphone or a $2,000 laptop. There are people that'll come to my store with like this basic device with a broken Ethernet jack, and they'll say, and we'll say, it's $45 to reattach it. And the guy just looked at us and he's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Yeah, we just reattached the jack. It's $45." And he's like, "You want to know how much this is worth when I'm going to go to sell it?" And I'm like, "No, because it's probably going to make me mad because I already told you the price." And he's like, $60,000. And I'm like,
Did he give you a nice tip?
Yeah, he did. He left like $100 in the tip jar for it.
There you go.
But like there are a lot of medical devices where if you want the IP address to be changed, if you just want to change your IP on your network, because I don't know, you attached a phone and it DHCP'd into the address of the machine, you have to pay $900 for or sometimes more per hour for a Philips technician to come out and open the device and change the IP address of it.
Right.
Like when people wonder why health insurance is so expensive, or healthcare in general, is so many of these items that so many medical devices where you can't do the most basic of stuff and it's just completely accepted, because the people that are like the people that lobby for it will tell them, well, this is for safety and security, and they won't know.
Yeah.
The ability to change an IP address is something that like your hospital administrator should be able to do.
Yes.
Without calling Philips. But it's medical equipment, ask their lawyers, it'll be a giant no. Thought about doing minor grants by posting reviews, lists of videos of software and uses they are good for.
I mean, we plan on doing, we already did a video about Cody, which is something we like. We want to do more videos about the existing work that's out there that's, helping people avoid, like, one of the things that's just hilarious about all this is, people like Mark Zuckerberg and, or the CEO of Google these days, whoever it is, they do not run their own software, I mean, there's that famous picture of Zuckerberg with the tape over their camera, right? So yeah, start running ad blockers, run Kodi, like don't use your smart TV, things like that.
What would be the ideal grant application to send in? What type of projects would get you the most excited?
I'm most excited about really going deep and low level. There's clearly lots of work to do on high level software, but the real advantage that is just almost insurmountable these days is how much control the companies have at the low level in terms of the knowledge of how to program things. So that's why I do like things like the Android open source projects. So those are the sorts of things that if we can start getting, I think Brave is one of the great projects that exist now. Brave is something like Brave, just replace the shit that we're stuck with.
What's your preference for development operating system, IDE editor, and development language? Are you dynamic with your choice of tools?
So I used to be a C person. I use Emacs as my text editor still. I got fed up with every single other thing though, so I'm working on my own programming system now. So it's I kind of vowed I will never program ever again unless it's in my own system. So
can you talk a little bit about the system that you're putting together to make it easier for people to view source code and make something of it?
Yeah, I can talk about it. I mean, it's still probably several years away from being done, and it might never be done. But I'm just trying to. I was kind of frustrated with Android Studio and as an Android app developer in 2016, and I just decided I would try to see what it was like going down the rabbit hole of software tools. And I kind of looked at something like Wikipedia. Why did Wikipedia succeed? And I think it is because the tool was so good. Anybody who was reading an article could press 3 buttons, and all of a sudden they were an editor of the article. And I was thinking, well, what would you have to do to make this true for software? And I'm talking about all software, even at the lowest level, the operating system software. So I started working on kind of my own personal project to see if that was possible, to make it so that you can you can be running software and then decide you want to program the software and have those changes available for other people, for yourself and other people within seconds instead of hours or days like it is now.
You've said that on the list of things regarding the projects that you want to fund and that you want to deal with, that you're okay with crypto, but you don't want a project to be specifically tailored to a specific cryptocurrency that is. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Well,
you have a lot of these projects now where they're trying to solve the problem of, how do you make money with a decentralized system, and cryptocurrency seems to be the answer. But I think, the first thing you have to solve is you have to make a good product first. So make the good product, and then, okay, that's already a very, very tough problem to make the good product. Now, if you're going to also have a good cryptocurrency system that you also invented with your awesome product, that's, one in a million, 1 in a billion chance. So I would recommend people instead to build a good product, to incorporate crypto payments, but be agnostic about what the coin is.
So you can use any.
Right.
It's not just
Yeah.
like one specific
Right,
coin.
because and it's kind of a lot of people these days I think are wary of kind of I like to reference a Victor Chaos from South Park, which is just kind of the annoying crypto shill. I think that's become, I think most people are kind of sick of that. So as soon as you're pitching a project and you start sounding like an annoying crypto shill, you start to lose people. So, but cryptocurrency payments are awesome, and we should be using them more.
You lost Paul Daniels when you said Emacs. He said he fell out of his chair.
Really?
Okay, so Carrie says, how long do you think copyright should last, if at all?
I mean, let me go back to, I do not I use my own key bindings for Emacs, just so you know. Like, I'm not going to get carpal tunnel syndrome with whatever bullshit Stallman chose. Okay, so anyway, what's the next question?
How long do you think copyright should last, if at all? As a published author with IP in print, digital, and audio, but not at South Park creator income, copyright is important. That's from Carrie.
Yeah, I mean, I think, ideally, how long should it last? I mean, if you want to do something simple, you could say, lifetime of the author or something. I mean, something like Star Wars is something where, well, George Lucas doesn't want to do it anymore. So, okay, let somebody else do it. Let anybody do it. And George Lucas has made so much money, nobody's going to feel sorry that George Lucas doesn't have a copyright of Star Wars anymore. If you're just barely getting by writing, spy novels or something, it should last your whole lifetime.
So we have some questions from metaverse people, or do you want to just point the?
Yeah, so let's just swing this around. Let's make it easy.
Yeah, we'll just swing it around here. So this is a question from Dream Next Gen. With the upcoming separation of the IRL and VR, would you support the battle to prevent megacorpos like Meta, Google, Nvidia from having full control of the people who prefer VR over IRL? So I guess this is a question.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. So, okay. So there's devices like the Oculus, which are trying very hard to tie you into Facebook and force you to have a Facebook ID. So yeah, absolutely. This goes, all these devices should be your device. So, and as soon as you have a VR device that you control, you can have it work with any VR network you want it to work with, and nobody's going to control your experience there. So the key is the same as all this other stuff. If it's your computer, you can do whatever you want with it. And if you want to uninstall whatever, Zuckerberg is putting into the Oculus to try to force you into his metaverse, if you want to install something else, you should be able to.
Do you think governments, foreign or domestic, are influencing the directions companies are taking? Very few companies seem like they'd be willing to do what LavaBit did, which is I think the email company Edward Snowden was using.
Okay. So what's the question again?
Do you think governments, foreign or the U.S., are influencing the direction the tech companies are taking when it comes to control over everything?
Oh, yeah,
being
they're
involved in
definitely.
everything?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of influencing there's the executives at these companies in Silicon Valley they go back and forth between DC and Silicon Valley all the time now. So there's lots of influence in that direction. And then in terms of, the free and open source software, there's a lot of influence where a lot of the grants coming to these companies are from EU grants or something where, they have specific asks. I mean, the Matrix is very much, Matrix protocol is very much funded by, I think, the European Union.
Yeah, I think we went over this earlier, but it's worth re-asking. I got 19 upvotes in the community page. Your average person who I think imagine gets to this point, they are looking at turning 2 billion into 4, into 8, into 12, into 18, or being like Larry Page, where they just keep focusing on making more and more. What are your motivations for doing this, and where you're pretty much giving grant money away to create open source software to try to make the future better, rather than go for the next yacht or the next island to purchase?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I kind of like Elon Musk's approach. I mean, I don't think he is doing that. He is actually he just sees it as capital allocation, and he wants to make SpaceX awesome, right? The people who are, they're just it's very immature. They're worried about having a bigger dick, really. I mean, it's that simple. their friend just got a big yacht, and now they feel like they have to have a big yacht. Or even worse, their wife, makes them do something because their wife doesn't feel important. And their wife makes them feel bad so for me, it's just, I guess, I'm lucky in this. I kind of had my dreams quashed by reality at a very young age. I always wanted to own a space station. And even Elon Musk can't have a space station. So,
Why not?
It's just too expensive.
It's
just too expensive. Elon Musk can't have it. Even
if he backs
Elon
out of
Musk
Twitter,
can't
he'll
have
have some money left for a space
maybe,
station.
Maybe Elon Musk will have a space station, and hopefully he'll invite me on it if he has one. But, in terms of having an island or a yacht, it's just a lot of work owning that
It's
stuff.
a lot of upkeep,
Yeah.
maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think? Let's start 11 up, folks. What do you think of the sort of people who buy a 10-year-old ThinkPad and install LibreBoot and Gentoo on it? Is there any future for modern computers without an IME?
An IME. What does IME stand for?
I don't know. I was hoping you would. I was going to seem smart by just projecting it up to you. Independent medical exam. See, this is why I tell you people not to use acronyms.
I forget what.
Just type this shit out.
I should know what IME stands for.
Independent medical examination. Yeah, that's, I guess, here we go. Somebody responded. Bada bing. Intel Management Engine. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. Okay.
I knew that, see?
Yeah, this goes back to making what I was talking about earlier with our chips need to be simple again. So, if anybody's not aware of, there's a guy named Casey Muratori. You guys should check out his stuff. He does a lot of stuff on Twitch. And he's kind of a hardware, software guy who's really advocating for simpler hardware and things like, Intel Management Engine, why do we have all these things on our chips? Like we just want our computers to work well. So we do need to get, it's very daunting, because some of these problems are going to take billions of dollars to fix. And when you start getting into problems like Intel.
With the Tesla Roadster, when I telnet into the car, TCP/IP over CAN, then use V built into BusyBox to edit the system live while the car is on, always give me a kick. Yeah, if I were able to do that, I'd probably wind up modifying my PID loop and making the wheels shoot forward off of my car. All right, do you ever feel like you're fighting a lost cause? If so, how do you handle the internal conflict of deciding whether it is all worth it and whether or not you should just go buy your yacht?
I don't think I'd enjoy a yacht. Honestly, the thing I did this is what I did when I got fed up. I played World of Warcraft, and it's and even then, I don't know. My biggest splurge was once I bought a character for like $2,000 in World of Warcraft because I wanted to start playing. I got really depressed and I was like, I want to play World of Warcraft again, and I'm like, it's going to take me 2 months to catch up to my guild, so I'm going to buy a character for $2,000.
I want to add in something about this. So one of our workers, our building manager, actually told me just to really cement in that Eron does love World of Warcraft, that for a time nobody knew where Eron was, and we couldn't get in contact with him. He was AWOL, and he had been trying to call you, trying to text you, and after like 3 or 4 days, you just texted him back, been playing WoW. I think it was when WoW Classic came out.
It was when TBC Classic came out, and all of a sudden, my guild just went crazy, and I was like behind everybody, and I had to make sure I was level 70 in time for Karazhan.
Okay.
Yes.
So there's what you can do to help contribute to these types of projects, but what can the general public do to prevent Silicon Valley from having so much control? Does Silicon Valley have an obligation to be neutral or let their biases define policy, considering the power they wield?
So I think it is. You can affect the culture, right? If you know people who haven't quit their job at Google, spit in their, seriously.
If people want to quit their job at Google, you have all the links in the description down below.
Well, we can't hire everybody who quits their job, but hopefully you can live 50%. On less. Hopefully you can be satisfied with less.
20%, 1%.
But no, seriously, the culture is a big part of it. Most kids, they live in an environment where if they have a job offer from Google or a job offer from, some, anti-establishment, like from Brave Browser, as an example, their girlfriend or their mom is going to be, oh my God, Google, you have to go to Google. And it's like, no, these people deserve nothing but contempt.
What do you think of Microsoft as the root of trust for all SecureBoot and UEFI shims? Could a more open source system be ran, or more open system be ran by, say, the Electronic Frontier Foundation or the Free Software Foundation?
Yes, I mean, I don't know a lot about these standard bodies, but
Microsoft is the root of trust for SecureBoot. Kind of puts a tingle up my spine. I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tough. Like these standards. I think when you're getting into the really, really low level stuff, it is hard because it's so expensive to do anything. And it's hard for, like, on this, at the high level software, it is still very possible for one person to make a gorgeous, beautiful piece of software that, works well and doesn't abuse people. When you start getting into like lower level things and kind of lower level standards, standard bodies haven't done a good job. I don't think EFF might do a better job. I mean, I like their, they do, Let's Encrypt is a nice project they do. So perhaps they could do a better job. I don't know. I don't know the details well enough.
Is Eron paying Blizzard a World of Warcraft subscription, or is he over on the private Ascension servers with the other cool Gen X folks like me?
Okay. So I quit World of Warcraft after Cataclysm. Vanilla was the best. And then I only got back into it in 2017 when the Elysium server came out, which was like the follow-up to Nostalrius, I think. And I did it just to kind of learn what was going on with the private server people, because it's fun. Like it's fun seeing people do great things, without kind of just on their own. So it was really cool that the team put together these servers and managed them well, managed them better than Blizzard manages their own servers. And then it was even more. The most hilarious thing happened after that with Elysium was there was an engineer who decided that there was too much corruption in the Elysium organization, and so he sabotaged Elysium, and we had Lights Hope the next day, and Elysium couldn't get back running again for 3 hours, but Lights Hope had cloned all of our characters off of. So this is what happens when you have less of kind of the man in charge. You have like just fun stuff like this happening. So I was on Lights Hope after that, and then. Well, yeah, unfortunately, my guild was not quite as anti-establishment as I was, so they were excited about Blizzard official classic, which was just an abomination, honestly.
How monolithic is the culture in Silicon Valley? From Paul Heitch. Probably enough that you can't wear that shirt to work without getting.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I quit Yahoo in 2004 and never worked for a big company again after that. I mean, we saw what happened with James Damore, which he did nothing wrong. I would assume it depends on the company. Some are worse than others. And yeah, I think it is very much, the friends I know who are still in companies are basically just, if you don't kind of, preach the message that you're supposed to preach, you just need to keep your head down and never say anything. That's my understanding.
Do you trust the fact checkers?
No.
That's it. That was a very quick answer.
I mean, they're doing propaganda just like everybody else. So, I mean, sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong.
Let's see.
Sometimes it's a mix of the two, which makes it worse. Let's see. There was one about. Yeah, I see a few people in the chat talking about EFF. If you have your own opinions on that.
I mean, EFF kind of disappointed me. I think that they kind of have fallen into the monolithic culture to some degree. They're obviously doing lots of good stuff. They're fighting lots of good causes. But, it kind of worries me when the EFF starts chiming in on issues that have nothing to do with computers. Like, I think they actually kind of made some pro-choice tweets related to like a Texas law, and it's like, okay, I'm pretty much neutral on the abortion issue, but I was actually pretty upset that EFF was kind of taking sides on that one. Like the EFF should be. I always thought the ACLU even was like is the EFF just going to wind up being a wing of the ACLU, which is clearly do these things exist just to help politicians get elected? At some point that happens, right, to these organizations. And hopefully hopefully there's still a lot of good people in the EFF who can stop that from happening. But make sure you, I would say anybody in the EFF should keep an eye on whoever's tweeting pro-life stuff. Like, I'm not going to donate to the EFF if they're getting out of kind of their lane in terms of, you know, being a tech organization.
Okay, this is over my head. Do you have any concerns about the future of privacy with asymmetric encryption likely to be broken soon with quantum computing? Governments could easily log every encrypted email and not decrypt in 5 years.
I mean, that's what. I mean, quantum computing breaking asymmetric encryption is something that they've been saying for a while. Maybe it will happen. Maybe it won't happen. If I were going to take bets, I would say it's not going to happen. That's actually my bet, is it's not going to happen. I could be wrong, though.
Who is the software guy you referred to a few minutes ago that's on Twitch?
Casey Muratori.
That's a hard name to spell.
Yeah.
Casey Muratori.
Muratori. mollyrocket.com. Yeah.
Is TikTok a national security concern, and should it be banned as suggested by the FCC commissioner?
I mean, is it any worse than YouTube? It's just a different group of people doing the stuff, doing the bad stuff. So I don't know if, I really don't know. I mean, could TikTok be sending everything and causing national security problems? I don't know.
In January of 2020, there was a lobbyist for CTA that runs the CES show, and he had said that you never know what's going to happen with these independents. They could be installing TikTok on your phone. That's why you should have it repaired at the manufacturer. And then one of their members, Samsung, 2 months ago, started pre-installing TikTok on people's phones.
Right.
And I just found that funny.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, clearly China's way worse than America in terms of, what they do to limit your tech freedom. So we clearly don't want to, go that direction for America. I mean, I would not recommend anybody let their kids be on TikTok. This is another one of those things where it's, the CEO of TikTok, I guarantee, or anybody who works for TikTok in America, like an executive, is not letting their kids be on TikTok.
It's like when Mark Zuckerberg puts tape over the webcam.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, it tells you everything.
Yeah.
All right, feel free to tap out whenever you're done with questions, but since these won't end as long as you're here.
Yeah.
So
how long do you want to go?
Okay. So let's see. It says on your YouTube introduction video, it describes you as a tech billionaire. Where do you stand on the debate between how much success, like financial success, is determined by prudence and making the right choices, luck, or the family you're born into? I always wonder what the wealthy think about that. Certainly, many believe it was because of their hard work and prudence and nothing else, but not all.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's certainly. I mean, definitely everything I have is because I got, I went to Silicon Valley. So, I was upper middle class. I had a computer given to me. My grandparents gave me an Amiga. I had an Apple II Plus before that. I started programming BASIC at a young age. All that absolutely gave me a huge advantage. So that's just, my, if you want to call it privilege or whatever, yes. But, at the same time, lots of other people were in that situation and did not do as well. So
ask them about Amiga. What about Amiga? They want me to ask you about Amiga, but they don't have a specific question. Oh, would you be open to making this is a good question. So do you remember the bodega story I told you about the gentleman that stabbed somebody that was attacking him in a bodega? Yeah. So when his bail was set at $250K and then they lowered it to $50, he opened a GoFundMe for his legal defense and also for his bail. And GoFundMe took it down immediately. Yeah. So would you make a fundraiser site that is nonpartisan, and do you think that crowdfunding platforms should be partisan?
It should be the same thing as what I've said with everything, is there should be enough platforms where it doesn't matter if one takes you down, the others, you can move to the others. We shouldn't allow so much market power to be on one or two platforms.
Because for all the lobbying I'm doing in these states, I started another nonprofit after the one that I started with you, and that raised about $800,000 inside of a month and a half. And it's just really, Like the idea that Microsoft or Apple could just tap them on the shoulder and say, get rid of this.
Yeah, no.
Like, that freaks me out.
Right. And again, it's the monopoly problem.
Okay. Want to answer this one? This has like 5 upvotes. It's kind of an asshole question, but what the hell?
Why should we trust it? I mean, I would say you shouldn't trust me. I mean, give me a chance, but you shouldn't trust me right away.
Trust but verify, is
Yeah.
what the computer guy would say.
Yeah.
Why have none of the super rich people in Silicon Valley provided houses to all the homeless people? Why are there so many empty homes and still so many people on the streets? I think they care more about tweeting about it than actually helping people.
I mean, yes. I mean, I don't know. I always use Palo Alto as the best example. I think Palo Alto the city of Palo Alto has, Mark Zuckerberg and everybody else, tons of billionaires. And I think the city of Palo Alto also has, I mean, you should look this up, but I would guess, 100 square miles of just undeveloped land. That's just like our own private park. Palo Alto has their own private park. That's like 100 square miles of undeveloped land. Yeah. Why don't they put up, if they really think they have the solution, they got lots of money and they can do it.
Last question.
Yeah.
Promise. Where is John McAfee hiding?
I think he's probably not with us anymore, sadly.
All right. So in closing, there are links down below for anybody more interested in the organization, anybody more interested in their grant program. Again, my nonprofit was funded by this. There have been no strings attached, and we have been doing great things for the past year and a half. You may have noticed that Right to Repair was losing for pretty much the entirety of the 6 or 7 years that I was traveling. In the last year and a half, the FTC has taken note. In Colorado, there was a wheelchair bill passed. Wheelchair manufacturers are actually starting to work with their customers again. In New York, a bill was passed, and Microsoft had a shareholder resolution that was pushed forward. Apple is at least signaling that they want to release repair programs. All this amazing stuff is happening, and there have been no strings attached. So, yeah, I fully endorse this. And anything you want to say before closing?
No, thanks for spending the time to talk to me, and I hope that we can do some good work. And I always wanted to do good work for people as a programmer, and hopefully that'll actually happen sometime.
And thank you very much for making this all possible.
Yeah, thanks a lot.